on the East Coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky, and I can hear an echo on WZZR broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio. So jump into the chat room. I'm there. Dave is there, Narara, and Mecky is very easy to see. We got the hats. Yeah, we're in there. It's more than just radio, right? We can interact. It's going to be fun. It's show number 372, 270, and 300. We're going to talk about giants. This is part 5 of the giant discussion, and Dave is going to fill me on what page we are. It says 75 pages altogether. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app, or 2 apps, or 5 apps to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. I looked them up. They look pretty cool. If you missed Solaris' show with Captain Henry Kroll talking about cosmological ice ages, shame on you. Shame on me. Every week it's shame on me. That's so true. But look, I understand. I looked at the chat. I looked at the feedback. Dave told me as well. It was a great show. It was awesome, as it always is. And we used to joke that Solaris warmed the crowd up for us. You're the crowd. You're the crowd. It's actually not. We're cooling the crowd down because they're super heated by Solaris. So they listen to us, right? You guys listen to us. We're gonna cool you down, right? We're gonna give you an ice bucket because her show is awesome. Every week, every single week, it's great. She's got documentaries out there. She's got books out there, right? So maybe find her online as well. Her story is fascinating, and we're lucky to have her before us. I really mean that. Anywho, if you have missed it, you can pay $5.95. That's US dollars, $5.95 a month to subscribe to the Freedom Slips archives, right? That means you can check out her show, our show, anybody's show. You've got full access to all of the Freedom Slips archives. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For Dave,
the Dark-Jung.
That's right, Swallow. And for me, it's the Daruk people, and we like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. It's been a crazy week. It is the end of April. In southern and northern hemisphere terms, that means we're coming into winter. May is the last month of autumn, more or less, and we had 30 degrees, which are my Kelvins. Is Kelvin or Fahrenheit? I think it's about 85, 90, I want to say, around there, or in the 80s at least, right? So it's hot. It's summer hot. And at the night it gets cold, but during the day the sun comes out. It's hot, hot, hot. Temperature records have been broken. Vietnam, I think, recently, Dave, you mentioned, recorded its hottest day ever, which is insane, and again in the 40s. We don't have to worry about global warming at all. Don't worry about it. Global warming, that's for the other people. That's for the other people. Now, see, this is the thing. I've had a few discussions around this with a few people over the last few weeks. And the interesting thing is, look, it's not going to affect me. These are people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, right? I said, oh, really? Yeah, this is going to happen in 50 years, in 100 years. So what do I care? I said, okay. So let me give you a bite of a reality sandwich here for a second. It's already started. It's happening as we speak. We've seen the first few waves of climate refugees coming through. It's happening. Okay, this is not an event that is going to unfold in 100 years' time or 50 years' time or whatever you think it might be. It's an event that is unfolding right now. The problem also is that the modeling that we've undertaken, the scientists, the weather, climatologists and so forth, they can only do limited modeling. It's everything is limited by the compute power that we have, right? I mean, we can't put all the variables in. We don't know all the circumstances. We haven't got all the data, and we haven't got the compute power to process it meaningfully. We simply don't, right? So our models are okay. They're pretty good, right? And it's a lot of hard work that these people do, but they're not the truth. The map is not the territory. We're trying to model something, right? But we are not coming close to the reality of it. There are a lot of factors. I give you one simple factor that was completely missed by everybody, not because they're not smart, but because nobody really thought of it. In fact, two things. I'll give you two things. One, as the ice is melting in both in the Arctic Circle when it's on land, and in the Antarctic when it's on the continental Antarctica. But what's happening is there's sluices are formed in the ice. So these are little tunnels, little rivulets that form in the ice. So the ice doesn't just melt off the top, right? There's little tunnels and channels that form inside the ice and between the ice and the land or the rock or whatever the ice sits on. Okay, and the water rushes between the ice and the land, as it were. Okay, so there's like a little rivers or rivulets that flow between the ice and the rocks, which nobody sees, and which we weren't aware of. But what it does, it actually speeds up the melting process significantly. So it's melting a lot faster than we thought. So it's not just surface melting. It's actually melting from underneath as well, because there's little tunnels in the ice that run right down to the rock the ice is resting on, and then form like little rivers.
Can I add
Number two?
Yeah,
please.
I want to add. So the tipping point happened with the sun's energy, where that a drop of dust sitting on the surface on the glacier is enough now. Is made of the material which absorbs the sun's heat, and the tipping point has come where that little speck of dust then starts to melt the ice beneath it. That's as simple as I can put it. And eventually, that's why you always see black dusty bottoms to these little. It starts off as little puddles, and they get deep and they join, and then they cut through the ice, and then they drain through into beneath the ice and the glacier and the substrate into the rock. Just want to add that, because I was watching a documentary on it, and that was one of the things that they claimed. They said, we didn't know this was going to happen. We didn't think this was going to be a thing. We thought it was just going to be the ice itself being able to reflect light up into the point where the temperature, the air temperature, is going to be the thing that melts it. No, the dust that sits on it is enough to get hot enough to be able to melt it. Now, that's something.
No, that's right. Which brings me to the second point, and this is the tundra. So nobody really thought much about the permafrost. Sure, it was considered, but what they didn't realize is when the permafrost, and there is a lot of it. So all of Siberia, right, is pretty much permafrost. Alaska, whatever isn't frozen over and iced over, is tundra as well, permafrost. It means it is constantly and consistently frozen throughout the year. It never melts. It never melts.
It's a mud that is meters and meters thick, and it's the top part of the soil that is so water saturated, right? It's a bog, but it's water saturated, and it contains a whole bunch of different gases in there too. And this is the big issue.
It's highly organic.
Yeah, that's right. It's highly organic. You're right. And all of this organic nature of the soil has been sitting there, basically stewing in its own goodness, waiting to be melted again. The exposure of this permafrost surface without being snow covered is now the danger.
Correct, because the one gas that is released in enormous quantities is methane, right? And methane is also a greenhouse gas. It's not the worst. It's not carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide and or even any of the other gases that are being released into the atmosphere by us. But methane certainly adds to the mix, and there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. So these are two things that people simply didn't account for, or not enough. The rivulets in the ice, not at all, and the tundra only marginally. So these are things that are speeding up the process. So back to my original point, it's not a 50-year journey ahead of us. We now, it's happening right now. The problem, of course, is that it's going to accelerate. I'm not really a doomsday person. I'm not. I don't see the point. I like to be prepared for all kinds of scenarios, but there's no point, bringing across any doomsday scenarios. But this is as close to a doomsday scenario as we're going to get without any, outside intervention and wars and such. This is nature just unfolding. It's just happening. and people say, oh, if we do this, if we do that, we can stop it. Well, no, really, that ship has sailed. Stopping it has we're now on the train of how do we prepare for the worst. That's the train we're on. The station, we could have gotten off, Dave, where it said, oh, hey, everything's going to be fine. That was decades ago, guys.
Last exit before the freeway, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I was going to add, there was something else that was also not calculated as well as it should have been. And in these, remember, we're talking about this starting in the 80s. So where in the last 30 years, we've seen the highest increases in the last 200 years, was in the last 30. And at the time when they were looking at this, back in the 80s, thinking about how it could... Because remember, they were talking about ozone hole being a problem for the Olympians in the 2000 games. And we knew about the ozone hole around about the 80s, and that was where it became public. One of the things that during the modelling is they said that, they didn't expect the outcome that they've got now, and that was the third point, to do with the sea itself absorbing more heat than it is. So they didn't expect that. Like I said before, the ice being white reflects a bunch of that, the radiation it receives back out into space, so it glows white, and that's good. That's a good thing. But the darker sea absorbs that heat and is contributing to this. Now, I'm going to mention the flower name in a minute, after I say that scientists at the moment are looking at recovering. They've recovered the DNA from a frozen mammoth, and they're now making attempts to recreating them, which is good. I think that's a good thing.
Not very far away. Not
far away at all. However, the buttercup, Mekki. So when we're talking where they were found, where the mammoths were found, and there's a million of them in this area. It was like a massive herd, giant, massive herd. You can't imagine how big the herd was. And that has not been buttercup territory since, but it was when they were killed. Now, I'm only putting this out there because those people who love cyclical can run with this one, and they like that, and that's fine. There was a time when there was buttercups in their mouth, when they were frozen, when they were snap frozen, during what looks like a meteor strike. So at some point, we sort of refroze again, and we've been thawing again since. But this thawing occurred while the glaciers were still retracting northwards across the Americas. So it's thought. You have to think about we were living at that point in a mixed climate environment where there was buttercups found more north than they have today. Plus, there was also still the retreat of the glaciers. And now that must have been a different ocean conveyor at the time also, because they say when that stops, the northern hemisphere gets cold again. But we won't get that cold. We'll just have a real hard time with the other things. Now, Mekki, I'm going to hand it back to you, because this is this perpetual argument that we're about to go into an ice age again is, to me, it's like the flat Earth. It's like people talking about the flat Earth. They want to distract you from something else, so they keep bringing this thing up and keep rolling out the flat Earth. I'm surprised that one of the current parties in Australia hasn't started talking about the flat Earth just to distract us from what else is going on.
Just on that, I saw a meme on Facebook, which put paid to the conundrum of the flat versus the spherical.
I love this one. Yeah.
Earth. In fact, what it is, it's a semi-sphere. half of the Earth is flat, and the other half is a sphere.
I like that.
No,
no, still no.
but yeah, look, you're right. There is a lot of, but you have to understand their vested interests, and the vested interests are usually with the money people, and the money people they want to say, look, there's really nothing to worry about. Look somewhere else. Let me open up another coal-fired plant. Let me have another coal mine. Let me do what I need to do. Let me keep polluting the planet. Look, again, it's fine. And how can I put this best? So, whenever something happens, and there have been some major extinction level events in our past, as far as we can tell from the geological record, and in fact, only a tiny fraction of all species that ever lived is still alive today. We're talking of a vicinity of 1 to 2%, possibly less, of all species that ever lived. All right, so that's a tiny little fraction, and other things have given us great killings, mass killings. We don't really know what, meteorites maybe. There were other things that happened surely, but what we're going to experience now is just the same thing again. The ecological system that will emerge once equilibrium has been achieved, because it will be. I mean, right now we're in a very topsy-turvy kind of time, and it's going to get worse, but then we're going to get to an equilibrium again, and things will calm down, but it'll be a different thing. I mean, the last time scientists believe this happened, it led to the rise of the mammals, to the detriment of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs went extinct, more or less, so we think, right? We think. The mammals, our ancestors, rodent-like creatures, they believe, started to populate the Earth, thrive. Yes, that's the word. And now we're seeing the same thing potentially, where the Anthropocene, that's the age we're in, that scientists like to call it, the age of man or mankind or humans, the age of humans, Anthropocene. We are causing these changes, more or less, or that's what scientists believe. And you're right, Dave, there may only be 2% of the current species alive at the end of it. So we might see the extinction of the corals. We might see the extinctions of the large land mammals. We might see the extinctions of the bees. We might even see the extinction, well, I doubt that, though, because we're pretty adaptable. I think the human race is going to be around.
I knew you were going to bring us into it.
Right. Well,
but maybe the 2% that the new climate favours isn't us.
Look, that's a fair point, but we, as a species, are extremely adaptable, and we have survived through worse. Now, will it be everybody? No, of course not, and it certainly won't be 7 billion of us at the end of this. But I do believe that the human race is resilient enough to survive this, and we were built to survive these things as well. I mean, this is where we start talking a little bit about the giants and all that ensues here. We have been designed in a certain way, and I use my words advisedly, to fulfill a certain purpose and have a certain lifespan. And within those parameters, we're extremely adaptable and very, very resilient. But we have flaws. We have built-in flaws. We've got a kill switch. Right? We got a built-in kill switch. That's our biggest flaw. we cannot live beyond a certain age. It simply won't happen at this point, at least.
And we have an operating temperature.
Yeah, we have, and we have that's right, and we have a very specific growth cycle. So I think we've got a stunted growth cycle, and that's why we're talking about giants as well. But hey, who knows? Whoever has interfered with us, and I do believe we have been interfered with. I mean, how can I put this best? After 40 years of looking at this and really trying to understand what happened. Trying to understand, make up your own mind is really hard, right? And you're looking at all the evidence, you're looking at all the mythology, and I take mythology very seriously, because I believe if something has survived over thousands of years as a story, then there must be a reason for that. It must convey some meaning. It must have been very important to the people that first started telling the story.
Like dragons, Becky, for instance. Just for instance, dragons.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Dragons exist in stories going way back. They must have existed.
Yeah. So okay, you brought it up, so on your head be it. But so most most creatures that I mentioned in fairy tales or mythologies or such as a manticore, a basilisk, a unicorn, right, a griffin, call them what, dragons. Dragons is probably the most prominent one that everybody can recognize. I submit, and I've said it before, I submit that these creatures may very well have existed. I'm not attributing magical powers to them, I'm not, but I'm also not saying that's not possible, but I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that these creatures may very well have existed. I'll give you a couple of simple examples. There's a whale called the narwhal, and it's the only whale that's got a horn, and the horn is actually the horn of a unicorn. Now, we're told that the whales at one point inhabited land, and then they changed, evolved, if you want to call it. I'd like to say they adapted to live life in the water, and they did. And so the narwhal was, which is now a sea-dwelling creature, at one point, according to science, should have lived on land, and it has the horn of a unicorn. The twirly kind of shape that it has. It
twists on itself and gets narrower towards the tip.
That's it. So it's a perfect unicorn horn. But not only that, there's some other creatures which are really quite astounding. I mean, you look at the platypus, okay? When the platypus first came to Victorian England, I think it was Victorian England, people believed it was one of those funny animals, like the made-up animals, because there was a craze at the time.
Or not.
Yeah, there was a craze in England at the time to just create these fantasy, like stitch different parts of animals together. Like put a wing on a beaver, or put an elephant trunk on a tiger, or whatever you have, right? So they created these fantastical creatures. So when they saw the platypus for the first time, they thought, that's insane. It's a beaver with a duck's beak, duck's feet. It's got a spike like a poison spike in the back. And it's got its young in a pouch, like a kangaroo. Yeah, sure.
Sure, that's real. And the spike has snake venom.
It does have snake venom. and nobody believed that the platypus was real. And to you people out there who think Australia is not real, I assure you, I'm not sitting in some kind of bunker in Colorado. I'm in Australia, and the platypus is a real thing. And I've seen a few.
I've got to talk to my SAG representative, my Screen Actors Guild.
I know, right? but the point here is, no, you're a radio crisis actor. Crisis radio actors, indeed. But the point is that these creatures that we have only a memory of, right, may very well have been real at some point. I mean, the okapi is another example. Yeah, what's an okapi, Mackie? Well, okapi is sort of an antelope, but it looks like half a zebra and half an antelope.
That's right. The rear half was zebra.
Striped. Yes, it's striped black and white, so it's half a zebra and half an antelope, right? Now, you see it today in the zoo, and you're not amazed, but when it was first talked about, people go, that's crazy, that's nonsense. At the turn of the 19th century, so 1901, people believed that the mountain gorilla was a myth. No one believed it. No one had seen one. We all know gorillas are real now, but back then, that's a myth. So the point I'm trying to make here is, number one, our fossil record is very poor. Like, fossils don't really survive that well, especially land fossils. Marine fossils, much better chance. 97% of all fossils in the world that we have today are marine fossils. So they survive pretty well. The land fossils, not so much.
Even though, despite us not being able to have adventured past, 8% or something, or less, of the sea floor?
Exactly.
We've seen more of the moon, apparently.
We know the moon a lot better. In fact, we know the surface of Mars better than the ocean floor. A lot better. It's true. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. Anyway, but
everybody knows it.
No, it's a fact. No, it is a fact. It is a fact. But everybody doesn't know. That's the problem. But the thing is this, right? We're now discussing these things, and people are dismissing these things out of hand because it's a fairy tale. It's not real. It's mythology. Mackie, what are you doing, right? No, I will repel that very, very strongly. If you make that argument with me, you better come prepared. Okay, you better give me some serious facts here, because if you can't argue the points that are pertinent, I mean, if you come and tell me, everybody knows and experts say, and all the scientists agree, no, that doesn't fly at all. At one point, all the learned people in the world agreed that the Earth was flat and the sun revolves around the Earth. I mean, there's still some of those left,
But they couldn't explain. They couldn't explain the motion of the planets or the stars for that matter. It didn't make any sense.
That's magic. It's the devil's magic. But see, the problem that we have here is that people are not educated anymore. People don't educate themselves, and the schools certainly do a very poor job of creating people that can look at information and critically evaluate it. You know, it is good to be skeptical. It is bad to be a denier, right? A naysayer.
But Mekki,
a skeptic. Go ahead.
Inherited opinion is so delicious.
I know, right? He said it, though. Look at the smart guy in the corner. He said it. Well, you know, I've spoken to a lot of smart people. I went to deGrasse Tyson's stage show, like a conversation. My brother got me there. I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable, but I wasn't blown away by him. Mm-hmm. I haven't been blown away by very many people. I'll be honest with you. I've been blown away by some people, especially researchers. But I really, really, really am not impressed with what we like to call the intelligentsia, because for the most part they seem to be trotting out the party line. They have the story they stick to, and that's the story. Everything else is dismissed. More recently, though, there's some very interesting things that came out. It's a documentary I'm going to share with Dave, which I found on the on the holographic universe, and scientists looking at that, and the math is pretty convincing, and I'm glad that the scientists are following up on this, because the math is leading them straight to the holographic universe.
That's right.
Theory.
Yeah, completely.
Right? So that's where we're going. Yeah, I don't hear my accent, by the way. I know you guys think I have an accent. I don't think so. Everybody else has an accent. I speak normal English.
And look, and a shout out to Rory. And I know it's
very late. Hey, Rory.
You probably should be in bed, but I'm not going to tell you to go to bed. Mekki, so the Planck length is not only a Planck is a length in distance, but it's also Planck time, which is very important to remember. And it just means that the universe is a digital universe, because
it is.
You can only be in that spot, and you can't be halfway between two things. I love that.
So we've got to explain it. In an analog universe, no, we have to explain it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a simple example of a record and a CD. Now, you're all familiar, I hope, still with the record, like, vinyl record and a CD. In a vinyl record, you have got the physical representation of the sound. So if you look at it really closely, you see a lot of tiny grooves that are the physical representation of the sound that was scratched into the record. Now, the needle can then pick up those sounds and amplify them, and you can hear it. It's a very ingenious, very simple way. I mean, the very first one was made out of wax. And I think it was who was it? What the guy Bell? Not Bell. It doesn't matter. It'll come to me in a second. But the point is, it's an ingenious way of capturing sound, but you're capturing the actual sound. So it's a curve, right? It's a very smooth curve, and a very smooth curve in the sound that you listen to. Okay. In a CD, that sound has been digitalized. Now, in digitalization, you're going to approximate the sound. It's very good because you can approximate it really, really well, but it will never be a smooth curve. It will always be like a step pyramid. Tiny, tiny little steps, mind you, but it will always be tiny step pyramids. In fact, it'll go down to whatever finite little unit you decide, but that's it. But it doesn't go any further.
So for instance, cassette tape was 22,000. So 22,000 elements per second. Stereo, 44 kilohertz, I mean 44.1 is 44.1 thousand single points of interest during a second. So That's the kind of focused in detail, but they're still only pieces of information. It's not like the FM signal, which is a true sine wave that you get from a record player, which is what Meki's saying. So, so a CD is digital. They're read, they're played back, and these are only pieces of information. It's sort of like watching a movie at 24 frames a second. When you only see 24 individual photographs shown to you, and none of those photographs has any movement in them, but together 24 of them per second shows your eyes or shows your brain movement, and it can no longer disseminate them from being individual photographs.
That's correct. And the point is, that our universe is like the CD, not like the record.
Mm-hmm.
Our universe, the Planck time length and the Planck distance length that they've just spoke about, define it as a digital universe. Now, if it were an analog universe, like the record, like the true sine wave sound, smooth and natural, there should be infinite regression. We should not come to a finite point, ever. It should just go on until infinity. Like, we shouldn't be able to get to the end of it.
That's right.
Well, until we get bored, yeah. But we can. So that's a problem. Well, it's a problem. It's not a problem. It's a thing that we have to figure out, right? So I don't like people saying that, oh, this is impossible, that's impossible. And it's actually interesting. My daughters are now at the age where they ask questions. 4 and 5. One's turning 4 soon. One is 5 already. They're in school, one of them. And so what do you say? And I'm completely honest with them. Any question they ask me, I give them the answer that I know reflects reality best. What is this? What is that? What happens here? What happens there? So I know why the sky is blue. I know why there's a rainbow. So I can explain all the simple things. And I was always very cognizant of being able to do that for my children, because they might ask me one day, and I need to know that, right? If I don't know something, I'll look it up and I educate myself, but I need them to understand everything around them. If they ask a question, I want them to get the right the right answer. And I'm reminded of this ad, which was fantastic. I think it was for broadband or something. And there's his father. A father sits in the living room. His son
can
comes.
we do it? I think they're driving a car. And he said, oh, that's right, because it starts like that. So the boy, I'll be the boy. So the boy walks in and says, why? What was it about?
Chinese wall. Why did they
build the Chinese wall? That's right.
Rabbits, to keep the rabbits out. Rabbits, son, to keep the rabbits out.
So the boy goes back and he finishes his homework, and he's proud as punch, standing there in front of the class. And when he has to say why they built the wall in front of his class, it's the wrong answer, clearly. Right?
Yeah, the rabbits. So now it's a very Australian answer, and the reason it's funny because in Australia we've got a plague of rabbits. We really do, and we built this rabbit-proof fence.
That's right.
In fact, across Australia, and I guess the father, extrapolating his meager knowledge of the world. I mean, why would anybody build a wall like that? Clearly for rabbits, because we did it. No, but this is really the thing, right? We need to make an effort to understand the world we live in, and rationally,
and also provide those right answers to our children when they ask.
100%. Critical. Because I tell you what, the school is not going to do it.
No.
The school will tell them whatever's in the book. Okay. Now I'm looking forward to some very robust discussions I'm going to have with some of the teachers. Because I will tell my children. I mean, Okay. So let me give you a simple example here, because you probably don't know what I mean perfectly. So let me put it in perspective. If we live in an infinite universe, an Einsteinian infinite universe, or forever expanding, like there's no end to it, then everything must happen somewhere. Infinite universe, single universe, though, right? Single universe, infinite, right? If we live in a multiverse, okay, so the quantum interpretation of the world, not Einsteinian, but if we live in a quantum universe, like a multiverse, then by definition everything must happen everywhere as well. Anything must exist somewhere, right? We just happen to be on our world line here. That's all on our world line here. So the only time you can categorically say something about something, like Santa Claus doesn't exist, there are no unicorns, whatever the case may be, right, is if you live in a finite Einsteinian universe. And as far as I'm concerned, that option is off the table, as far as I know. Happy to be told otherwise. So if somebody asks you, is there a Santa Claus? The answer has to be yes. Yes, there is. Where? I don't know. I do not know. But if we live in a multiverse, there is a Santa Claus somewhere. Okay? Because that is the very definition of the quantum state. That's the very definition of the multiverse. Everything is possible somewhere. Okay? And every novel you ever read, every movie you ever watched, is a reality somewhere. So we're not really inventing these things. I think we're channeling them if we're living in a multiverse. We're channeling them. Some of us channel them well. They get paid a lot. Others don't channel as well. And then they're not very good writers and it doesn't make for good meaning. But the point is that it is all possible. You cannot, and I can't lie to my child. If someday, the consensus is, the multiverse is actually a lot of crock and there's good evidence why it is, then okay, well, fair enough. Then I'll change my tune. But in the meantime, I don't know enough to give definitive answers of negativity. So I can't prove the non-existence of something. I can't prove it.
I just want to add something here.
Go ahead.
Because you're in the same realm as I'm thinking right now. So remember Einstein's box of time. So it's all time over the entire universe, everywhere. And in that box is all the time from the beginning to the end in the same box. If you were holding the box in your hand, all time everywhere in the universe is right there in that box. Just think about it like that. But if you take a photograph, it's difficult to know where in time that you should place it. And because time is said to exist in the past and in the future and the now, can all interact with itself. That means yourself 10 minutes ago can influence right now, and 20 years from now yourself can interact and alter and change your decision that you can just make now, or one that you made when you were 8, for instance. And this connection of all time, because as we know, there is no distance. Even though there's a Planck length, that's a measurable thing that we have to measure when we're measuring something. But because we've proved time and distance are no longer connected to each other, it means that it doesn't matter where you were. You don't have to be sitting in the same spot when you're 8 to now to, in 20 years' time. You just have to have been in the box. And since we're all in the box, it just means that we always have the capability of being able to interact with ourselves at any of those future, the now, and the past times. And that's been proven with quantum entanglement, proves that time is irrelevant.
Time and distance. Both time and distance are no longer a thing.
Because they're no longer a thing. That's right. And this is really, obviously it's fundamental to what we talk about and what we mention all the time. The other thing is, if you're interested in understanding this connection, which they've found now, Mekki, which is really cool, and that is the connection between the quantum world and the macro world, or the world that we see, the Einsteinian or Newtonian. All of those have a single constant which works in all of them, which is, it seems like it's now the connector that connects everything together. And that the value is called the golden ratio, and it's 0.618.
That's right. It's phi. You will find it in nature. In fact, if you look at the shell of the Nautilus, the shell of the Nautilus, even the way the human beings are grown, and in fact, the spiraling, the spiral configuration of the Milky Way, any galaxy for that matter, follows the golden ratio. It's fascinating stuff. It really is. And then you've got the Fibonacci sequence that ties into that as well.
Absolutely does.
It is a very interesting subject matter, which informs our hypothesis to some extent.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so mathematics, at the very least, seems to underlie the construct of this universe. And someone once said that math is the key to this universe. And I think that's probably true. My math is horrendous, so I'm disadvantaged, but. I can see certainly there's a lot of elegance, and the funny thing is this as well, Dave. Science says everything is moving towards entropy, right? Now, entropy is a state of extreme disorganization. Think of it that way, right? And so it moves away from order. So the natural state of things is moving away from order, which flies in the face of everything.
That's right.
Life, because life is a highly ordered system. But even the galaxies, the planets, the solar systems, even the interplay of the atoms is a highly ordered, construct. So I'm not entirely sure.
I don't agree with the entropy statement. I do not agree at all.
Yeah,
and they even talk about the universe itself, and it just ends up a big black empty space with nothing going on. And I don't believe that either, because I believe the measurements that are being used to measure how isn't it sort of ironic that everything the further we look away is moving faster and faster? How is that possible?
Yeah.
And we discovered the Doppler effect, which means that sound, for instance, as it comes towards you, is compressed, and so it pitches up. When it's next to you and not moving in relation to you, remember it's all the observer, then it's the right pitch, and as it moves away, it's stretched, so it pitches down. And that red shift that we see everywhere, the further we look away from us in light, it's red shifted away. I believe that the speed of light slows down and causes it to red shift. Therefore, they're not speeding away from us, they're just there. And they're not going away from us, and it's not expanding. And I believe that, and my thoughts are that the whole universe will eventually suck back together again into what would be a large collection of mass, and then pop again like popcorn and turn back into another universe. They are my thoughts. I believe that that's going to happen. I don't believe that because we're all spreading apart, it's all going to become this useless state where there's nothing anymore, with zero light and just matter sitting there doing nothing.
Well,
and even in the end, that all just sort of dissolves away.
Yeah, well, this is where to. I mean, I've got a couple of questions around this, and no one has ever really fully answered. Number one is where does all the energy come from? And the answer to the question is, okay, it's dark energy. Right. So we can't explain where all the energy for all this motion is coming from, for these things, but we're calling it dark energy and dark matter. So dark energy and dark matter make up 98% of all existence.
And
we
you
just
ask
can't see
them what it is, and you go, well, we can't see it, we haven't found any, and we don't know what it is. But
clearly it fills the equation in. Yeah, it does. It does.
That's right. Only because we're assuming that light doesn't downshift and get slower. That's it.
Yes.
It's all based on that wrong assumption.
It's actually funny I mean, look, I don't want to just discredit everybody, but when people need to, I mean, you have to logically look at this. You can't just hold on to an idea forever if it doesn't work. You've got to try another idea, right?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot. I mean, and this is really the problem that we have, Dave, fundamentally as a society. And I need to bring it down to this level to make people understand as well. Maybe something can change. In order for us to actually explore the cosmos meaningfully, inner space, outer space, all these wonderful concepts, right? We need to move away from a pressure position. And I mean a position that we put our scientists in where they have to perform in order to be funded. Mm-hmm. Because the pure pursuit of knowledge may not always be profitable. So profit knowledge not always align. They just don't. And I do believe that we need to increase our knowledge and wisdom, hopefully, and learn more things and do more things, but we need to do this on a basis that is free from economic constraints. But these days, the only research and development that happens, for the most part, is that that's funded by the private sector. I mean, sure, the governments also fund research and development, but if you don't bring in the money at some point, right, especially in the private sector, you're out on your ear. I mean, if your stuff isn't meaningfully deployable in the world for something and someone can sell it and use it or whatever, they don't want to know about it. So pure knowledge is almost frowned upon, pure insight, pure wisdom. That's a real shame.
Raise him in a box.
Yeah,
I want to raise him in a box. And so at the end, when he grows up and he gets out, he's going to harbor a deep resentment against me for doing it.
Yeah. Nice. But need to prove it, right? But
that's right. I need to prove it. Yeah, so you need to pay me for it.
The problem, of course, is that it discourages true exploration.
Yeah,
right? I mean, so scientists these days, when they go into science, when people study science or at university, they choose fields that have a future. They choose fields that, where they can earn a living, right? I believe very strongly that a true scientist, should not be concerned with it. We should fund them, right? Rather than funding all the unemployed bums that are perfectly okay to work, but simply don't, right? I've got a real problem with that, right? Anybody who's able-bodied, able-minded, right, and doesn't work, in my opinion, is a parasite. Okay, so get off your hind legs and start working. I mean, just for yourself. But I think a society that would fund scientists and science and the exploration of knowledge. And I know I'm talking about Star Trek here, by the way, right? In case you haven't figured it out yet.
That's absolutely true. But Mekki, right? I want to support you here for a sec, because in wartime, humans have made the most radical and numerous inventions and steps forward because they're paid by the government.
Money issues.
Yeah, that's right. Zero money issues, right? And so straight away people start being creative. And that's where we need people to be. Not on the war side, though. We need them to be worry-free, start experimenting. Let's get us some new things, right? Let's come up with some new concepts and ideas.
100%. 100%. And we're just not geared that way. Our society, our civilization, I want to say even, right? Because everybody's almost the same these days, is geared exactly in the wrong direction. Our society is doomed to self-destruct. I tell you, I'll make it as doomsday, blah, blah, again. No, it's not. I'll tell you why. So our economic model is predicated upon the thought that there is an infinite number of resources that will allow you for infinite increases in profit. That's the model. That's the simple economic model we have. Profits must always go up. That's actually impossible, because we live in a world with finite resources. Unless, once we go space exploring and all that, that could change and explore, and the resources become more plentiful, but they will never be
let's
infinite.
hope there's no money in space, Mekki.
Oh, there's no money. I'm sure there's no.
Once we go into space.
Gold.
No, once we go into space, I don't think we should have money any longer. I think that should be the end.
Only the money back
to Star Trek.
No. Well, I'd like that. I would like that. I would like the Star Trek society. I think it works. It could work. But we have to grow up, and we're never allowed to grow up because we're never allowed to age to maturity. So, nicely full circle. We've got another couple of minutes here. So let me just make a couple of announcements. This is listener-funded radio, everybody, which means that you, the listener, can donate to the station directly. If you like what you're hearing, not just us, the other shows as well, of course. It is not funded by any corporation. There's no corporate sponsorship of any sort, so we can say whatever we please, which is great. And thinking out, right? But it is listener funded. So if you have a spare dollar here and there, please go ahead and donate. Easy to find, left-hand side on the page. It's revolution.radio, www.revolution.radio, left-hand side, donate button. Very easy to find. Subscribe if you can. You can click through the advertisers as well, the sponsors. Yeah, they're not large corporations. You won't find them. There might even be products that you like. And it is really important to understand that this is a free thing. Dave and I, none of the other hosts are getting paid. We hope that you like the information we provide. We have day jobs, so this is not our full-time occupation. We're like paid-for buskers, right? We're like, you know, like in the city, if you see a busker, so you don't have to give us the money, just give the money to the station and support Nighthawk in running it. And we've been on this now for 8 years. We're one of the longest shows, I think, on this station now.
Yeah.
In our 8th year, and it's been great. So if you can support, that would be fantastic. That's all I have to say. And I think the music should be starting any moment. But look,
yeah.
But it is important to keep media as diverse as possible. I'm really worried about the fact that there are 6 corporations in the world that own like 80 to 90% of all media. Print media, online media, movies, TV stations, radio stations, 6 corporations, all right? In the 80s, in the 70s even, 70s and 80s, there were hundreds of different interests. And before that, there were thousands of different owners of different newspapers and so forth. It is really a problem that we have. And you know what? You can switch between the TV stations or even websites. It's the same story that's being told. They're telling you the same story on every channel. You know, might be slight variations to it. And there's a lot more news that's happening than what we are shown. The world is a very big place, and a lot of things are happening all the time. And we are normally only shown the worst of the worst, the things that keep you in fear. So I do urge you to take a look at alternative media sources, such as this one. And if you're here already, tell your friends.
There's the music, Mecky. We'll see you after the break. Take the break to donate and refresh yourself. I'm hoping the break has finished. Sorry, I couldn't hear it, so my apologies. You're back with Dave and Mecky, Shiny Side Out, on freedomslips.com, on the #1 listener supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archive. So only $5 a month. I think I'm paying $5.95 or something like that, which is really good because that's like a coffee and a piece of toast for me. Thanks, SJ. That's all it is. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have. If you've just caught the Shiny Side Out show for the first time, welcome aboard. If you hear us talking about Solaris's show and you don't know who that is, also welcome aboard. She has her show before us. And we're halfway through show number 372.
270 and 300.
Nice reverb. And we're talking about giants.
That's right.
This is the 5th of those shows. The 5th of them. We're on page 23, if you didn't catch the last shows. And just to quickly recap, giants are mentioned in a ton of ancient texts, including the Sumerian texts, the biblical texts, texts from around the world that don't necessarily have to be biblical, but there's tales of the old times. And in this is pre-Diluvian, or before the flood. And the flood is a real thing that actually happened historically. It's not just a tale in the Bible, and we've covered the flood off in a number of other shows. And so the stories of the people who lived before the flood, who were, according to the Anunnaki, who passed their tales down to the Sumerians, who wrote it down, were a very tall stature made by the Anunnaki, and they lived for a long time. And so far we've spoken about and last week especially, Meki, you weren't here, but I know you know the text, and the question was, well, how tall could we be?
Yes.
If we lived the same length of time. And the question that we raise is, would we be as tall as those giants? If we lived to 700 years, for instance, then would our growth period just be extended and we would reach that? And the other point that we've made from a knowledge perspective, if you live, say, till 80 or 75, and instead of 700, you'd be a toddler compared to us now on the human scale. But if we were giants right now and you met someone and you were 700 and you met someone who was only 30, you might consider them just mere children in the evolution of the mind. And the other question that comes up is there something else that occurs rather than just, you're born, you're an infant, then you're a toddler, and then you're, a child, and then you're prepubescent, then you're a teenager, and then you reach your prime, and then then what's left for us? Middle age, and then the elderly, right? With all of the infirmness that occurs with that. If you could stretch that 30 period, where your body hasn't started to, lose genetic information, if you could stretch that out for 650 years, my goodness, right?
Yep.
And that's what we're raising here with this. So we're up to the point in the show notes where we're talking about the list of the tallest people. And I'll hand it to Meki.
Cool. So I assume we haven't spoken about Don Curler yet. Don Curler lived in the States. He was 249 centimeters tall, or 8 foot 2 inches, and he was 56 when he died in 1981. Another one is Bernard Coyne, also 8 foot 2, and United States. He was 23 when he died in 1921. They believe that he might have possibly been as tall as 8 foot 4, but at death he measured 8'2". Another one is from India, Vikas Uppal, 8 foot 2 as well, but he was not officially measured by the Guinness Book of Records, and he lived 21 years as well and died in 2007. Patrick Cotto O'Brien, 8 foot 1 in Ireland. He lived for 46 years in the 18th century. And they looked at, he's the tallest person recorded at the time, and the first in medical history to stand at the verified height of 8 feet, which is 244 centimeters. And his remains were examined in 1972, and his height was verified. And then there's Gabriel Estavo Monjane in Mozambique, 8 foot 1 inch, and he was 46 when he died in 1990. And I believe that Brahim Takula is still alive. He's 8 foot 1 inch. He lives in Morocco, and he possesses the largest feet in the world. They're actually 1 foot and 3 inches long, which is 38 centimeters. Dave?
Wow.
I know, right?
I'm in awe of these people. So Suleiman Ali Nashnush in Libya, also 8 foot 1 inches, the Libyan who was the tallest basketball player in the world. He lived till 47. He died in 1991. No, 8 foot 1 seems to be. There's a lot of people, either 8 foot 2 or 8 foot 1, and then there's 8 foot and a half. Jean Joseph Brice, Le Gant des Vosges. There's a Roman champ in France, the height controversy, and in 1835, and they don't know when he passed away.
Yep. And now the interesting thing here to note is that the tallest person officially verified, which Dave would have shared with you last week, stands at 8 feet 11.1 inches, which is just shy of 9 feet, and again just shy of 3 meters. So that's 272 centimeters. That's tall.
Robert Wadlow.
Robert Wadlow. That's the tallest. So just shy of 9 feet. So we know that we can reach 9 feet. We certainly have the ability to grow that tall because people have 8'11", 8'9". So between 8 and 9 feet is a thing that our species can achieve. On the other hand, we also know there's some very, very, very tiny people around the 4 foot mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point here is that our height difference as a species is enormous, right? To me, that also talks that probably at some point we interbred with many other species. And guess what? We did.
Yeah.
So we inherited some of those characteristics from other species. And I think the extreme height might still be left over from the genetic material that may still hark back to the days of the Anunnaki and the Igigi. Always bearing in mind, of course, that the original Adamu, for the most part, were killed in the flood. But as we learned from the Jewish texts, the ancient texts, some of the giants survived the flood. So we know there are accounts of giants having survived the flood, which was designed to kill specifically them. Not wicked mankind. Yeah?
No,
and
that's
having
right.
said that, and maybe it was wicked mankind at the time, the giants, is my point. Right? Because, again, this is not a continuous story of one people's. It isn't.
We weren't made yet.
That is correct. We weren't there yet. We hadn't been made. The Adamu had been made. The Adamu had been made in order to relieve the Igigi of their work.
That's of their toil.
That is it. That is the creation story that was given to us in Genesis as well, except that the Bible simplified it to Adam and Eve. What we do know is from the ancient Atrahasis texts is that it was 7 males and 7 females that were the first breeding couples that were made. Okay? It's a lot more detailed. And I'm just got the text open here, the Atrahasis text. Do yourself a favor, read it, everybody. What I'm going to do right now, I will post a link to the text. It's translated officially, right, by a scientist, if that's a thing for you. So you can say,
seven of them in were male and 7 female, but they were according to the text placed into different grouped birthing mothers.
Exactly.
To get
I believe
an intentional male and intentional female result.
Bingo. And I also believe that these birthing, actually they're called womb mothers in the text.
Right.
They're translated as womb mothers. I believe they're artificial wombs. Mm-hmm. Oh, Mackie, you're a crazy talker. We're talking thousands of years ago. That's impossible. I'm very careful when I say no to something. Right, Dave?
It's funny that someone says that's impossible, but if you read the text, these people were aliens who came down here and their own help had said that they didn't want to work for them anymore, so they made some other people to do the work for them.
Yeah.
You got to.
You have to read it.
Don't tell me.
Yeah.
That's what I argue. Don't tell me that I'm wrong. You read the text. It's there. Yes. And this is the thing that I mentioned last week, Mackie, was that the text is so accurate that it's so factually correct in a storyline that it's not something that would have been passed down orally from generation to generation to generation to generation to get to these Sanskrit, cylinder seals.
Beautiful.
It would cuneiform text. It would not have gotten there that way. It's totally believed that the Anunnaki, after the event has occurred, because humans were last on this, and then they sort of did their mop-up work and left. But before they did the mop-up work and left, they handed this story to the humans and said, well, this is how it all came about. But we've got to shoot off now. We'll be back later, right? Whenever that is, we'll be back. But this is the story, so you better get your scribes ready. We're going to read it to you.
I think So I agree, but I think what happened was, very specifically, something that occasioned a tools down event. Something happened that caused for tools down everywhere, right? So we've got these massive monoliths still in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. I think there's 3. They found 3 now that haven't been finished. There are actually 3 inside the platform of the Temple of Jupiter. But 3 hadn't been finished. So you don't go through all the effort of doing this, and then, I mean, you're 3/4 done. I've seen the pictures. You're 3/4 done. You finish this thing, man, because you spent a significant amount of effort on it, right? I would imagine.
Yeah.
But no, but we see, the funny thing is this, Dave. We know, and Hatcher Childress is actually a really good advocate of this, and he may be wrong about other things, but he points out, and not just him, the others as well, there was this civilization, the monolith builders, right? They used monolithic stone structures, and we've always asked the question, not why, not how, because the how is actually irrelevant, because it was done. It was done.
They did.
So it was possible. So you don't have to argue about the how, because there it is, right? The question that I have, and this will always haunt me, is the why. Why would I use stones of that magnitude? Why? When the Romans have shown us so clearly that concrete does such a much better job, an easier job. Maybe not better, but certainly easier. And we are concrete builders just like the Romans. We don't engage in massive stone constructions. We just simply do not. It's just too hard. So not the how, because it happened. There it is. We don't have to argue about the how at this point. I'm much more interested in the why, because the why will then answer so many more questions. The how, yeah, well, that's, you know, was it pulleys, levers, was it levitation, was it technology?
I know you're going to answer your own question with, I don't care.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Tell me why. Why did they use? I mean, maybe this is also, it goes to the psychology of these builders. Maybe for them, like I said before, it wasn't a thing. I'd love to travel back in time and say, hey guys, why? And they look at me, Mekki, that's how we do things. I don't understand the question. That's just how we do things.
But we have a tech that makes it so easy. Why wouldn't we do it this way?
There you go. Or more likely, well, Mekki, you know, we are trying to do blah. And in order to do blah, we have to do this. And I go, okay. Because you don't just do stuff, especially on that scale. I don't care how advanced you are, right? Unless there's a good reason, and hence my question, why? Anyway, sorry, we're digressing just a little bit, but it's all connected, everybody. It's all connected. And just because creatures are physically large, I mean, we're talking, when we say giants, right? I'm envisioning, I'm looking at the Anunnaki in the Sumerian texts, which are really clay tablets. They're about, in size, how we are to a toddler. So they would be around 12, 13, maybe 15 feet tall, about there. In comparison to a fully grown 6-foot human being, roughly, right? So we're not talking about giants that are hundreds of meters tall. We're talking about giants that are 15. Hey, you know, it could be 20 feet tall. I don't know, right? But certainly not hundreds of meters tall, like giants, right? And I think that maybe there are taller ones. I don't know, but I think around the 15, 20 feet mark is probably reasonable to assume at this point, unless more evidence comes to light. There may have very, very well been larger ones. There may have been other creatures that were larger, other species that were larger, right? So let's be clear. We have a very narrow view of reality. We need to expand our view of reality. And SJ just posted an extract from the Atrahasis tablet, and essentially what it's talking about, that they got the people back then got the Surupu disease. I believe it's the common cold or the flu that the gods gave them because they were too loud, and so they made an offering to the god, and the god was shamed into taking away the common cold or the flu. Clearly, it's come back to us. Now, what is the theoretical maximum height limit for a human? This is an article by Pat Harkin, from Quora. Well, we've seen a man of 8 foot 11 inches, so it has to be above that. There are numerous factors which start to become important if we want to know a theoretical limit, right? And we're talking about the 1g, just Earth normal gravity. That's another point, Dave. We're talking about Earth normal gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Mars has slightly less gravity. The Moon has got about a third of the Earth's gravity. If we lived in space, right? Let's say we're born in space, we live on a space station in space under zero gravity, we would grow a lot taller and a lot thinner. I don't know if you've been fortunate enough to watch The Expanse. It was a book, and now it's been turned into a TV show. If you get the chance to watch it, it is excellent. The Expanse. It shows how you would look if you had been born and grown up in space. So they actually do with computer things. They do the body shapes of these people. Cool. It's fascinating. Yeah, it is really cool. And now, if we lived on a much denser planet, for example, where the gravity was higher, we'd all be a lot shorter, a lot squatter, right? So gravity does have a lot to do with how tall we can grow. Firstly, we need time to grow. And that's why I love this article. That's why I picked it to share with you. And that's very true. We need time to grow. Most giants have pituitary tumors, which cause accelerated growth. But such tumors tend to outgrow their blood supply and die and or destroy the rest of the pituitary, causing early death. Oh, JMJ12 just locked something into the chat, and that's why it's important to go in the chat, guys, because this is interactive. Now, this is the message from the chat. There are a few old photos around of giants up to 20 feet from Europe in the 1860s. Now, JMJ12, I have not seen those pictures. If you've got a link, that would be extremely helpful, sir, or lady, I don't know, JMJ. So if you could send me that link, just post it in the chat. Dave and I can follow it from there. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. So time to grow, right? But see, the tumor will then destroy the pituitary gland and cause death. But it's interesting because the tumor on the pituitary gland causes this growth. So clearly the pituitary gland, and we've actually mentioned this pituitary gland ad nauseum as well, is responsible for the growth. Secondly, skeletal strength. So how strong is your skeleton? The connecting tissues, all the joints. And the mass of a person grows about by the cube of their height, but muscle and bone strength increase by the square. Okay, so your height is cubed, but your muscle and bone strength is squared. So, for example, that means, let's say the 8 foot 11 man was 9 feet tall, then he's 50% taller than a 6 foot man, right? With me so far, and weighs 338% as much, but only has a skeleton 225% as strong, if you do the math. Right? So skeletal strength to less, which brings me to a very interesting point, Dave. I don't know if you remember the Star Child skull. Very unfortunately, Lloyd Pye, rest in peace, was very unhappy with that name. But everybody knows what it is when I talk about it, so I use it. The Star Child skull has an enamel-like structure, if you will. It's with interconnecting fibrous tissue.
That's right.
And it's extremely strong. So people say, "Oh, it's just a male. It's a deformed child. It's this. It's that." No one has ever answered the question why it is so fundamentally different from a human bone structure. Right? It is not human bone. It is more akin to your teeth, your enamel, and very strong fibers. The fibers are so strong they couldn't be cut with a diamond saw. Okay. Now, before you start throwing rocks, do your research. Right? Don't come to me and say, "Oh, that's all been disproved." No, it hasn't. Go and do your research, come back and talk to me then. So I'm thinking here, Dave, that if you modified our skeletal structure at its fundamental or most fundamental level, right? If you were to make it more enamel-like, and if you were to infuse these connective fibers, right? You would make it a lot stronger. In fact, the Star Child skull is a lot lighter, and there's a lot less bone. but it's a lot stronger than a human skull, right? So just to be clear, there are things that could be done in order for this to work. And not only that, you look at dinosaurs, for instance, here, right? Now, these days, the largest living creature is a sea-dwelling creature, the blue whale, right? It can't live on land. It would, if it was beached, its internal organs, its entire structure would just collapse under its own weight. It needs the water to live. It couldn't otherwise. But we know that things like the T-Rex, even Brachiosaurus, Brontosaurus, well, we do believe they spent a lot of time in the water. We do think that they went and ventured on land as well, and they were massive. So I think that bones, right, or skeletal structures can be constructed that would support rather tall human beings. The next is coordination. Longer limbs have longer nerves, but those nerves are no faster than normal. Coordination is therefore an issue, with falls being more common in taller people. Potentially, but there are stories, and I'm going to relay a story here for you that I recently picked up from the internet about a red-haired giant that was found in a cave in Afghanistan. Very tall, and I can't remember exactly, I think it's 10 or 12 feet tall, 15 maybe, but he was as fast, if not faster moving, than normal human beings. Now, if you look at it again from a more removed perspective, so we've got human beings at 6 feet. Let's call this golden standard for humans, 6 feet tall. That's the standard right now. And everything that we judge from that standard. Take a step back, take 10 steps back, and look at it more broadly. If a human being was 10 feet, 15 or 20 feet tall, in the scheme of things, it doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't matter too much. Why? Because there are creatures that tall that live on the planet, and they have fairly fast reaction times, right? Not all of them, but it is certainly possible. And falls, well, the truth is if a tall creature falls, it is usually more detrimental than if a small creature falls. So you can drop an ant from your height, from the height of your head. You can drop an ant. It'll walk away. It'll be fine. Because it's not heavy enough to have gathered enough speed to crash, right? Now, if you drop it from a sufficiently enough height, then it will. 9.81 meters per second, I think is terminal velocity. But if I took a fall and hit my head, it would be very bad from that height. 6 feet, because I'm about 6 feet. If I fell, I hit my head, that could be lights out for me, right? So there's that. That's true. But I don't agree with the statement that the reaction time has to be slower. I mean, I look at some of these basketball players, right? And they're right.
They're 8'11", that's right.
Yeah, I mean, they're right there at the edge, right? And they're not, I mean, they run circles around me at 6 feet, I guarantee it, right? So let's park that one, but it's a fair point to say that when tall people fall, it is more detrimental. And that's interesting, because some of the myth, or some of the stories in the myth, actually talking about that specifically, falling down. The giants were afraid of blackberry or bramble bushes, because they would get entangled and fall. Not something that you want if you're 10 or 15 feet tall, right? It's very interesting. Finally, this author contends there are cardiovascular issues. The larger body needs more circulation because of the greater mass by the cube, but the cross-sectional area of the major blood vessels only goes up by the square again. Heart failure is a common cause of death in giants. That is true. Human beings that are tall do have heart issues. That's a fact. Again, I believe that is something that could be looked at and fixed as well as part of the other things. Because before we can get to that height, or to the height that I think we should go to, we have to turn on telomerase. We have to get the pituitary gland working and to produce HGH forever. We have to make sure that our telomeres are copied correctly over time. So we have to arrest the aging process, number one, and then we have to make sure that HGH and the other hormones are produced in sufficient quantities to allow us growth. There might even be a transformational stage in our growth. Now, I'll give you an example. When you're born, you got no teeth. Makes sense because you're sucking the teeth. That's what mammals do, right? We got no teeth. Then we grow teeth. They're called milk teeth. They're with you for 7-8 years, right? Then you lose them and you get your proper teeth. If everybody died at the age of 6, we would never know that you get a second set of teeth, would you? Mm-hmm. You don't. Not only that, a child's skull is still soft until the age of about 4 or 5, or well, actually more like 3 or 4. It is still soft, and there's still a slight opening in there. So you got to be. So when children fall, it's actually not too bad. They can't injure their head too badly because it is still quite pliable and soft. That's also why children are usually taken aside fairly young to have their skull elongated. You've seen the practice. I believe that elongation of the skull is a copying of the race of people that existed. Skulls like that. That's my opinion. So there are different developmental stages that we go through as human beings that we would not know about if we didn't live to that age. We just wouldn't know it. I think Dave and I talked about this last time. We said, 2 weeks ago, if nobody ever lived to the past 40, for argument's sake, right? Maybe we would never see a gray-haired or bald person, right? Maybe. But you really have to live past a certain age to see that next stage. Menopause. If all the women died before 40, we wouldn't even know what menopause is, right? And he goes, but what about the age decay? Well, my point here is that we arrest the age decay, we arrest aging, and we'll see what happens if we just keep growing. We'll see. They talk about giants with several rows of teeth. Maybe the next growth spurt, the next growth milestone for a human being, maybe once they're past 200, I'm just making stuff up here, right? Maybe it's several rows of teeth, like sharks do. Sharks have several rows of teeth. So when one goes, another one moves in. There's no reason why a human being couldn't function the same fashion, right? Because if it's genetically possible, and we know it's in a shark, then it's genetically possible in a human being. But that might be going too far. I hope everybody understands the point we're trying to make here. There may be growth stages that we are completely missing out on because we're never living long enough. We are very familiar with the growth stages that we go through up until the age of 100. Very familiar, especially the aging. We didn't have to age. How much more could we? And our bodies didn't break down. Maybe there'd be other things triggered, within us. I don't know. Ultimately, this author here, Pat Harkin, can't put a figure on the theoretical maximum height of a human being. But if you look at the distribution of the list of tallest people, which we've just done, we're probably looking at the current maximum, which is not much below it. So I agree with that statement. I think right now, in our current physiological configuration, if you want to call it that, I think 8.5, 9 feet is probably the max we can achieve.
Mickey,
I honestly believe we have to go on.
We might be the light version of the human form.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. When you scale something down, you don't need everything in it. So maybe not only did they restrict us by age, but maybe by facilities.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. And it would make sense because I honestly believe, and again, if you look at us and how we are, and especially in comparison to other creatures, there's a lot wrong with us. A lot right, but a lot wrong as well, right? And I think it was a massive scaling down of what we should be able to do physically. I believe that the information is still there within our DNA. It has simply been because the thing is this, Dave. Telomeres and telomerase are still there, right? It's not like they've been taken away. Let's say if telomeres didn't exist and the telomerase, excuse me, the enzyme was gone as well, right? Then we would live to the age of maybe 20 before we die, right? Because the DNA would just copy poorly very quickly and we age much quicker. But it's there. It is there. It was left in to expand to, let's say, 100, right? And telomerase is also there, and it does protect the telomeres up until about the age of 25, at which point, I guess, the decision was reached, well, at this point, we switch it off. We switch it off, and here we go, right?
And
Now you start aging.
and that should let them to live to 120.
Yes, exactly. Now, so my opinion is that all the building blocks, all the genetic information, all the coding, all the enzymes, all the chemicals are still in our bodies, just not activated. I don't know, if you're in IT, there used to be something called, I think, the golden screwdriver, right? For IBM machines. And
right.
So essentially what IBM would do, they would deliver an entire supercomputer. Oh, back then it was a supercomputer. They would deliver the entire computer to you, like a mid-range machine, right? And motherboard and processors and memory is all on there, but you can only access what you pay for, which is fair enough. So you pay whatever you pay, and you can access 2 processors, some memory. There it is, right? Beautiful. But there's a lot more in the machine, but you haven't paid for it. So, but let's say you decide, I do need more, whatever it is that you need more of, and then you call IBM. They send a guy with a golden screwdriver, literally, and he just turns the functionality on for you. Right? So you pay more, and now you can use more processors and more memory, and off you go. So it is dormant in the machine, in my example here, and I think it is dormant within us again, right? So I really think, Dave, the information is all still there. We just have to find a way of accessing it. And I wonder if there have been any booby traps or anything.
Yeah, that's a good
like
one.
that, right?
I like the booby trap one. Because we've spoken already about the DNA master switch, which has been discovered, which can grow limbs and organs back.
Yeah.
All right, so that's in there as well.
100%.
It's like we've found the keys to the kingdom. I mean, there's no one there.
Yeah, that's it.
All right,
That's it.
There's no one to ask. We've just got to find out what it all does. And because there was no manual, there was no blueprints, nothing. We're working it out. But I like the fact that there could be a booby trap in there, that if we did something, it's going to have a consequence that we didn't desire. An undocumented feature, as we say in IT.
Yes. An undocumented. I love those, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the stuff that you find when you go and look. That's what that is.
That's right.
But Dave, tell us about human giants in lore, myth, and life.
Oh, very animated. Legends of old abound with human giants in lore, myth, and life. Throughout history, there have been stories of them on Earth. It is also known there have been actual medical cases of giants in real life. Gigantism in humans is caused by a mutated gene passed on through generations or by a tumour on the pituitary gland. These are rare cases that happen to individuals, but has there ever been a race of giants? In the folklore and mythology of every culture, there have been stories of and legends of giants. One may wonder if myths were based on facts, or if the facts actually became distorted into mythological legends over time. In the society in which it is told, a myth is usually regarded as a true account of the remote past. So, does the meaning of the legend of giants, like Fafner and Fasolt, who seized Freyja in the Norse saga Der Ring des Nibelungen, the Ring of the Nibelung, is a true account from ancient Norway? Did giants like Fafner and Fasolt actually exist at one time in the far distant past? Meki? Earth to Meki.
Mythological giants. Enceladus of the Gigantes was the son of Gaia, the mother goddess in Greek mythology. The Gigantes were enormous in size. Like other Gigantes, Enceladus had the lower limbs of a serpent and dragon scales for feet. When a battle ensued between the Olympian gods and the Gigantes, the giants, Athena, goddess of just warfare, among other titles, that's interesting, just just warfare, injured Enceladus with her spear, which disabled him. Enceladus was then buried under Mount Etna on the island of Sicily. Fire from the volcano is said to be Enceladus' breath, and tremors from the volcano are when he rolls over to comfort his side when he was wounded. To this day, people say that an earthquake is caused by Enceladus. Now it's in Sicily. In Norse mythology, Ymir was the first giant and ancestor of all Jotnar, which are the giants. Ymir was formed during the primeval chaos known as Ginnungagap. In the Gylfaginning, written by Snorri Sturluson, in the Prose Edda, Ymir's creation was explained as follows. Just in Niflheim there arose coldness and all things grim, so what was facing close to Muspel was hot and bright. But Ginnungagap was as mild as a windless sky. And when the rime and the blowing of the warmth met, so that it thawed and dripped, there was a quickening from these flowing drops due to the power of the source of, and it became the form of a man, and he was given the name Ymir. Now that was by Snorri Sturluson from the Prose Edda. Fafnir and Fasold are also of Norse mythology. Odin, the father god of all gods, had the two brothers build Valhalla. For doing such a good job in building the beautiful castle, Odin promises Fafnir and Fasold they can take Freya, the goddess of love, as payment. The giants take her, then are offered a hoard of treasure that was stolen from Alberich, the dwarf. When the brothers divide the treasure between them, they argue over Andvaranaut, a magical ring. In greed and anger, Fafnir kills Fasold and takes the entire treasure for him. In the cave, he transforms into a venomous dragon and for many years guards his treasure.
Original site of King Arthur's grave. Archaeological evidence. In 1890, anthropologist Georges Vacher de la Polge made a discovery of fossilized human bones found in a Bronze Age grave under a mound of earth and stone in the Castelnau-le-Lay cemetery in France. The bones, humerus, tibia, and femoral, indicated the person would have been over 27 feet tall. That's over 3 meters. The bones of the giant of Castelnau were analysed and studied by several professors at the University of Montpellier, who all confirmed they are bones from a human. Wow, 27 feet. In 1894, a discovery of prehistoric cemetery at Montpellier, France, yielded 3 human skulls, 28, 31, and 32 inches in circumference, along with other bones of gigantic proportions. It was determined that these bones belonged to a race of giants 10 to 15 feet tall. On the grounds of the old Glastonbury Abbey, Somerset, England, there is a grave with a plaque that reads, "It is the tomb of King Arthur." According to one account, written by the historian Gerald of Wales, I love these names, Queen Guinevere also is in the same grave. When monks in the year 1191 dug up the grave, they found remains of a man who would have been about 7 feet tall in life. A petite woman lying next to him. She had long golden hair that disintegrated when it was touched. It was an unusual grave the monks found, 16 feet underground. There they found a stone slab on top of a hollowed out log. Under the slab was a lead cross that had an inscription on it, identifying the remains as Arthur and Guinevere. In the year 1278, the remains in the grave were transferred to a shrine in the new monastic church, where it had it can be seen today. Was King Arthur a giant, or just an unusually big man? Were there more men of his stature in the Arthurian legends?
That's fascinating, dude.
I didn't even know that.
I mean, 7 feet. No, I didn't know that either. Right? 7 feet tall back then would have been enormous. Because people, I think, back then were about 5 feet on average, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like seeing for us, like seeing an 8-9 foot tall person
Today,
these days.
that's right. Yes.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, that brings us to David and Goliath. Giants in religious texts. We've covered them, but let's refresh what we learned earlier. In the Old Testament, Genesis 6-4, it says that giants were in the earth when the sons of God went unto the daughters of men. Deuteronomy 3:11, in referring to the Great Flood, tells how only the king of Bashan remained of the remnant of giants. So it's only Og that survived the flood, the king of the giants. In the Tanakh, the canon of the Hebrew Bible, a race of giants called the Anakim. Again, Anakim, man. How is that not the same? Lived south of the land of right? Yeah. Lived south of the land of Canaanite, near Hebron. This is 23:2 and Joshua 15:13. In Numbers 13:33, ancestors of the Anakim were the Nephilim, from the sons of God and daughters of men mentioned in Genesis 6:1-2. In Hinduism, there's a race of giants called the Daityas. They are a clan of the Asura, a race of deities who are always battling the Devas for power. The Devas are benevolent supernatural beings, while the Daityas are aggressive and power-seeking. The word Asura in ancient hymns means powerful or mighty. In the biblical story of David and Goliath, read that Goliath was a giant of a man and no one could defeat. Yet young David killed him. Now there's some discrepancy between texts in this story. Josephus, a Roman Jewish scholar and historian of the first, wrote in the text of Samuel in the Dead Sea Scrolls that Goliath was 4 cubits and a span in height, which is 6 feet and 9 inches. The 4th century gives Goliath the same height. However, in later manuscripts, it is written that Goliath had 6 cubits in a span, which is 9 feet and 9 inches. Did some study for the later manuscripts show that there was an error in early calculation, or did Goliath take on new height as the story grew? No, the fish was this big, I tell you. Unedited, full text of 6 Jewish Encyclopedia, there's a large section devoted to giants and presented as biblical data. Giants are mentioned as inhabitants of the earth before the Great Flood. They are believed to have belonged to prehistoric Palestinian tribes. So just one thing, Dave, before I ask you, what do we believe? The giants are always, virtually always, I think always, mentioned as belonging to the earth, meaning they're either children of the earth goddess or children of the daughters of men. Mm-hmm. So at least half the heaven is earth, but the other half is not. But it always mentions the connection to an earthly mother. Okay, and I think that is a critical piece because it's repeated in every single myth. Their mother was of the earth. Their father, not necessarily. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also they're pre-flood, and they're around the Palestine or around those areas where the last of their kind was before they left.
Yeah,
and they left back into space again. So. And remember, these are the ones that were born of the gods. So the gods were here, and the giants were here, and then they all left.
Yep.
So
100%.
So what do we believe?
What do we believe, Dave?
What do we believe? Between archaeologists, scholars, historians, and mathematicians, there is still no definitive proof as to how gigantic structures on Earth from ancient times were constructed and transported, such as the Moai on Easter Island, the pyramids, or why the Nazca lines, the ancient geoglyphs in Peru are so gigantic. And we contest also the Jupiter Temple base and all of the, and I have to also say, all of the massive stone structures around, and which were all very, very similar in structure, despite them not supposing to be able to talk to each other at the time. They just had exactly the same method in constructing. Who made them? It's a big question. Eric von Daniken, author of Chariots of the Gods, very famous book in my mum's collection. She was a big fan, so was I. In 1968, maintains that these gigantic structures and images were created by extraterrestrial visitors of a higher technology order or of intelligence, or taught humans the knowledge of how to make them. Still, there is the issue of transporting enormous blocks of rock. Did the aliens create devices that could move tons of rock? Were the alien giants, or were the humans who made these structures giants? Good question. There is one story which is regarded as ancient myth until archaeological evidence validated the legend. From an archaeological point of view, there is evidence of a race of red-headed giants that the Paiute Indian tribe in northern Nevada had passed down stories from generation to generation. According to the Paiute legend, the ancestors battled this race of giants who were a hostile and warlike tribe. Sitikar was the name that the Paiutes called the red-haired giants. The Sitikar in Paiute legend means Tula eaters. Tula eaters. Think about that for a minute. 4, they are the fibrous water plant, Tula. Supposedly, the giants were also cannibals. Other tribes, like the Mayan and the Aztecs, recorded encounters with giants on journeys further north. On many continents, burial sites and remains of giants have been discovered, some as tall as 12 to 15 feet. Mackie, also the red-headed giants or red-headed folk have been found in the caves in Bolivia.
Yeah.
And what's the other town? Near Peru as well.
It actually ties in with what was reported out of Afghanistan, the red-haired giant the military was meant to have had an encounter with there, which is interesting that they would choose to make this giant red-haired rather than anything else. You know, it seems to be in continuous kind of theme that we have here. I also contend that the redhead or the red-headed people, the freckled people, are a subgenus of Homo sapiens, meaning I think they're their own little group of people. Because if you look at the facial features, the hair, the skin, it's a very specific kind of morphology. Yeah, not a bad thing or a good thing. Just as something very, I shouldn't say very unique, as something unique. If something is unique, it's unique, or it's not. It can't be very unique. Sorry, I'm my own grammar Nazi. But it is certainly fascinating. And again, as you were reading this, I didn't want to interrupt, but they're saying here, blah 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 blah. There still is no definitive proof as to how gigantic on Earth, blah blah, were constructed. Again, don't focus on the how too much. Ask why they were built, and the how will follow. Just ask why, right? That's my. I want to. This is really important to me. Sorry, I need to say this. We think we've got time for one more. It's the Giant's Causeway, Finn, Bet Nandona, and the Giant's Causeway. And we still have the beloved tales and legends that are told to each new generation. One of these legends is of Finn McCool, I love that, of Ireland, and Benandonna of Scotland, both giants. This is the legend of the Giant's Causeway, an actual historical site between Ireland and Scotland, and how it was built. If you've seen Hellboy, it was actually in there. The legend says that Finn, while roaming around the north coast, would look across the narrow stretch of sea to Scotland to see if Benandonna was around. He wanted to ask Benandonna to come to Ireland, to have a battle between them, to find out who was the strongest. Since there were no boats large enough to hold either giant, Finn built a causeway with stones so Benandonna could walk across. However, when Benandonna saw the causeway and started across, Finn realized his rival was much larger and more fearsome than himself. Finn ran home and told his wife how big Benandonna was. Una, his wife, made Finn put on some baby clothes and made him crawl into a cradle and pretend he was asleep. When Benandonna arrived at the cottage and demanded where Finn was, Una said Finn was out for the day and invited Benandonna in for tea. She then asked him to be quiet so as not to wake Finn's child. When Benandonna saw the size of the baby, he had no desire to confront the father. Benandonna hurried back to Scotland quickly. I love that little story. The Giant's Causeway in County Antrim, on the northeast coast of Northern Ireland, contains stones that are hexagonal in shape, and they are huge. The tallest ones are 39 feet high and quite thick. The structure looks like it was constructed intentionally with a ball and socket joint method. Experts on this kind of phenomena say that the 40,000 interlocking basalt columns were created when there was an ancient volcanic eruption. It is a very complex explanation on how lava can form these types of precisely placed structures. Or maybe Finn was a very intelligent carpenter. Yeah, look, again, we do see structures in nature that are natural. Sorry for the double Dutch there. Others are not. It's sometimes hard to tell the difference. I have no opinion on the Giant's Causeway. It looks impressive. I don't know if you've seen it. But we do know certainly that in nature, crystals and such can form hexagonal or even other shapes. It's something, you know, and certainly the structure of rocks is crystalline in nature, certainly granite. So it's a possibility, of course, absolutely. But I love this little story of Benandonna and Finn McCool, Dave.
Yeah, me too. Look, that takes us to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it today. Stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer. Become part of radio. Call in and interact and be a part of it. Don't just sit quietly in the chat room. I can hear the music going, so there it is. We'll see you next week for show 373 while we continue Giants. See you, everyone. Have a great week.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Had a good week off. How was where'd you go?
Singapore and then Hong Kong.
Oh, good on you. How was it?
No, I'm fucking wrecked, man. I'm wrecked. You take your kids on a holiday. What do you think is going to happen, right?
Yeah, I know.
No.
I made the joke because I followed a comedian and he said that when he was growing up, his dad, every time they went on holidays, his dad was always grumpy bastard, and it was only when he had children and decided to go on holidays, foolishly decided to go on holidays and take them somewhere like Disneyland, did he realize why his father was grumpy. Because it costs too much. It's way too hot. You don't do anything you want to do. It's all about the kids. And and by the end of the holiday, you need a holiday just from the holiday.
Yep. Look, I'm glad we came back on Thursday morning.
Yep.
So I had a couple of days just to sit, because you got to sit, man. Sitting is awesome. People don't sit enough. That's the problem.
It's overrated.
People don't wear enough hats, and people don't sit enough. Oh, it's overrated. Yeah, that's true. No, because, man, it's important. It is so important to sit. Sorry, eating a cornichon. But yeah, no, that was good, man. But because had a great time. What about you? Your break was good?
Yeah, all I've done is I just emptied out the garage.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's a lot of work, dude.
Well, it's a double garage and it was completely filled, and we've got a skip. I think a 4 cubic meter skip, and it's about maybe 2/3 full at the moment, and there's more to go.
Wow.
But the builder got it for us because, Belinda said, I think he's got to throw a lot of stuff away. And he goes, yeah, whatever. I'll hire the skip for you. Oh, God. So we had a whole bunch of columns under the house needed to get replaced because they were rusted through. And this is galvanized metal. And the builder had done a really shonky job with those piers. So...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're $770 for a pier in parts only. That's only a foot tall. And it's not the builder ripping me off. This guy is giving to me those at cost because he'll make it off labor, and then it's like a whole day's labor to swap a pier over because just because the house type, it's just complicated. And so we've got 4 more to go, and this was meant to be our cupboards and our vinyl flooring for downstairs, and now we've had to delete that off the project because we just can't afford it all at the same time. Fuck, dude, it's crazy.
Oh, Jesus, man, it's not cheap, is it? It's not freaking cheap.
Oh no,
Nothing's cheap.
We pulled 60 grand, right, for these improvements to finish the house once and for all. And now that we'll be able to finish it to a certain extent, but we won't finish it entirely. So we'll have to go another round. Kill me now. But otherwise, it's all good. It really is. So I was going through the garage and I found a bunch of letters. I'd kept a whole bunch of stuff. I've moved so many times, and I just keep putting them in boxes. And I unpacked a couple of boxes, and I had a little, maybe negative emotion period there where I was reading through some of these letters that I'd received from my ex-wife before we got married. Oh, they were beautiful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were so nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
And
that must be a bit weird. No, I don't know. Is it?
I haven't experienced those kind words to me since.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So that's why I look at it and I go, why couldn't that have worked? Fuck ya. You know what I mean? I look at it, what a suck. Why did that fucking... Anyway, no, it's all good, man. Yeah, but anyway, that's just the state of it. You get that.
Wow. Well, but as long as you got some time for yourself. I mean, I'm not saying cleaning the garage is time for yourself, but it is.
It's actually pretty good alone time. I don't mind it. It's like driving. I love driving. I'll drive anywhere. If TXC said, "Look, we need you to drive to Perth," I go, "Sure."
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm doing it now. I mean,
go on. See ya.
I'm already driving. Great. I'm on the freeway. Because that's great time to myself. I like that. But outside of that, I'm making provision for a nice screen, like a 75-inch OLED screen or something, in the new downstairs lounge room. That should be really nice.
Cool.
More like a cinema experience, really. Hey, I took the kids to see the Lego movie.
That's nice. That's awesome.
That was really cool.
Was it good?
Yeah. I love it. I think that if the Lego movie had been out when I was a kid, I would have put so many more demands on my parents to give me more Lego. Because what they're doing is they've now enlisted the design help from people in every country who are the Lego masters. And then they've got the creativity of children's competitions to create creatures for the next movie. And they only make everything out of actual Lego blocks that you can buy.
That's pretty cool.
So you can make anything you see in the movie. If you've got those pieces in your box, you can make it.
You know, they're making a movie. No, sorry, there's a TV show now, Lego Masters or whatever.
Yeah, that's
it's gonna
right.
start.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's interesting, right? There's a lot of Lego stuff happening. And in Hong Kong, there's this Langham Place shopping center. There was a massive Lego display of actually, I guess, Mongkok, Hong Kong.
Yep.
Which like 4 or 5 cross streets. So they had built it to scale, like in detail. It's massive. It's pretty big, right?
Wow.
And out of it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Took some pictures of it. But yeah, Lego is the thing now. I mean, I used to love Lego, but it's made a huge research. I'm not saying it ever went away, but I think it has gotten a lot bigger, right?
I watched the documentary, and it was nearly gone. It was nearly gone. They resurrected it.
I got mail! Yay! I got mail! Yay!
That's special ed. Special ed from Frank Yankers. I've got mail! Yay! So, yeah, that's a very funny character. That's actually not mail. It's actually just an SMS. So I watched a documentary on it, and they have their own teams of their own specialists, the master builders in Lego itself, who only get a chance to employ someone once every 2 years into a role doing that work, and that's all they do is make stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the interview is to make a sphere out of the least amount of parts.
Wow.
That's your interview.
Wow.
And you have to do it within a time frame and present it to them, and you're timed clearly and filmed, and that whole thing's like a panel, but they're all watching you secretly while you build it, and then you present it.
Fit, damn you, fit!
You feel like Homer hitting them with a hammer. Chewing on the pieces, and you've got access to any piece that you want for this exercise. Then once you've passed the interview, then you go through a bunch of like a course on how to be able to conduct yourself and create. So
that's cool.
It's really cool. But I love Lego. I even had tech Lego. I loved every bit. But if they had that when I was a kid, far out, man, it'd be a different world.
You'd be doing very different things, my friend. That's what
Yeah. Wouldn't you?
100%. Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
So I put a bunch
Hey, who are you going to vote for?
Oh, you've got to use the voting compass, man.
Do you?
Yeah. I'm going to send you a link, and this is run by the ABC, and what they've done is compiled all of the policies that are current in this current election, and then they've made it a questionnaire. So what you do, you go through it, and then it'll basically do the chart and place you in the chart and which party that you most align with for policy.
Really?
Yeah. I've done it every single year, but this thing is so awesome. And you'd be surprised, if you answer all the questions honestly, you'd be surprised at who you align with. And this is the way it should be done.
I'm going.
It should be done like this. You should not be able to see any parties at all. Just be asked questions.
Is there a death penalty question there somewhere? I'm for it. Want it.
I want, and it should be anyone who's currently in the political system. Yeah.
That works for me too. Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely. Priceless. Okay, so tomorrow